it was definitely fraught with danger. Um, one only knows how much progress they've made when they're confronted with situations in life. You know, you can think that you're the greatest fighter in the world until you get in the ring, and that's when you find out how well you can fight. Um, and so it's important for us to have experiences, even ones that we consider unpleasant, because that lets us know how much progress we're making in subduing not another person, but subduing our own mind. Um, we don't really know where we are because our mind uh, manufactures our reality. But when we are confronted with situations, how we work through them, how they impact us, what conclusions we draw from them, give us some indication of whether we're progressing or whether we're regressing. And based on that, we evaluate ourselves. I think the main reason or the main difficulty we have in being studious of around this is because we're so busy evaluating whether someone else has progressed or regressed. You know, it's always the outward look. But this is a path of constantly reflecting and constantly correcting then our behavior based on our great wishes, our objectives, and our goals for saving ourselves from and bringing ourselves out of delusion, and also for saving living beings. And so we have to have an inner compass and an inner focus, not a selfish focus, but an inner focus to constantly stay abreast of where we are on the path. The thing is that when we don't pay much attention to this, when we do pay attention, we have a tendency for judgment, judging ourselves or judging others. We have a tendency towards uh, berating ourselves, or you could do better. But if we get in the habit of looking at our progress and encouraging that progress, then we will move away from the negative ways that we approach our reasoning towards life, and we'll have um, another reason for how we approach a situation. For instance, uh, for some years, I had felt that we were denied, that's the word I'll use, just denied the opportunity to truly be a part of Buddha Master's Sangha. I mean, like in a real up close and personal way. We're so far out, we don't get any news, nobody calls us about things. Um, we're waiting for years for English translation, and some animosity built up in me because of that. I was thinking that somebody is doing something to me, you know, somebody is preventing me, or somebody is hurting me, somebody's ignoring me, or somebody, all of these kinds of thoughts would continually arise. And so Buddha Master encourages us with the little bit that we have. He said, don't pay any attention to that. Don't look at things that way. He says, be gladdened when you encounter difficulties, because difficulties actually build up your character in such a way that your states elevate, and you will be able to peer through. Because you're not so self-absorbed, you'll be able to peer through these uh, false appearances that invade the mind, and nothing will be able to not only not harm you, but destroy your peace or take away your confidence. And so as we try to just do that, situations come up and they no longer seem like situations. They're just like what's going on in the world today. But we're not moved one way or another. So we experience that kind of joy and that kind of peace when we were out in California this time. Now that's not, nobody can give that to you. That has to be cultivated within yourself, and when it is, then you can look and see that you have stopped. You have become still. And in your stillness, you can see all of the scurrying. You can see, all of the fears around what might happen in the future, or what's going to happen in the future, or who's going to do what in the future, or where something's going to. Having abandoned all of that, one can abide in peace. Now, that's my world. This spiritual world, that's the world that I live in. I also live in the world. And some of the things that are purported to be said or put into place could scare the bejeebies out of me. I mean, I haven't really read the news for 10 days and got back yesterday, was trying to catch up on things that have been said, things have been done, new laws put into place, things that, one could get really, really fearful. But I'm understanding certain spiritual principles. And these principles, much like aerodynamics supersedes gravity, these spiritual principles supersede worldly laws. But for them to actually work in your life, you have to know them. You have to know how to put together the combination so that it brings about the capacity for the particular spiritual principle or spiritual law to operate. If you don't, you can know something about it, but it will never work for you. You have to actually understand how to work the principle. And when you can do that, then it works for you. It works if you know how to work it. So a lot of what we're learning in what we call Buddha Dharma is just learning principles and which ones supersede others and how to activate them and what they're based upon. That's all. So if we talk about morality, we might be talking in a worldly sense about good and bad, but when we're talking about virtue, now we're not talking about morality, things that are based on a lower principle of goodness. We're talking about an elevated or a higher principle that will supersede the lower principle. And I say many times, more people believe in badness than they do goodness. So they try to be good first, but if that doesn't work, then they turn ugly. They turn bad because it seems like bad folks are tenacious enough to win, and that lets us know where we really stand. So little by little, there's a shifting or turning inside of us that makes us find a confidence in living a meaningful life here and defining what meaningful life is, defining what a successful life is. And it says it's one that is filled with joy and peace, in unity. It said that is what they called it the Holy Spirit within. And so when you get in a place that you can recognize your old behaviors, you can see them operating in others, uh, and you suddenly have no investment in that, then you know you have grown, and that's what increases your confidence in the Dharma. It increases your confidence in your daily walking out of life, and it gives you a kind of contentment and joy that the world doesn't give you, so the world can't take it from you. So I will talk more about what occurred there. I just need to let it settle because there's a whole lot of other thoughts moving around. I can say that we are happy to be um, home. And um, and some of the things that we wanted in the past have now been offered. But you know, karma changes according to causes and conditions. And so sometimes there are shifts in direction by our own volition. We create a space for ourselves. And then when someone comes along later and offers you something and you wanted it, you wanted it, you wanted it, and by the time it's offered, you've already found your way and you're okay, kind of like you are, doing what you're doing. That's uh, kind of where we are right now. Um, and with it comes a kind of, not a human kind of pride, but a real sense of gratitude um, for the effort that we put forward to understand the Dharma and to walk in it. And it's not any one person who does that. He said that good friends in the Dharma are the whole of spiritual life. And so when there is, it's like promotion, it is the good work of the entire Sangha. So I just want to thank you, even though you don't know why I'm thanking you today. I just want to thank you for your effort and what you've put forward in um, in your own cultivation, your own development. Each person working on themselves to be true, um, and your desire to know the teachings and to live life in a way that you can truly benefit others. Um, then you don't have to, Buddha Master talked about the good fortune that comes. And there's a special dharma that's given an empowerment for good fortune. And then there's one that's given for awakening, right? And uh, uh, Master Zizi and I used to lament all the time because he asked her which one did she want. She wanted the one for awakening, and that's the one he gave her. So, and that she also has authorization to transmit, and um, and And I have, but neither one of us had the good fortune. What I mean, Zazie, you messed up. You goofed. You should have asked for the good fortune. You can do a lot more to help people with good fortune than you can with bad fortune. She said, "You're right. I should have." She said, "But oh no, I was trying to be spiritual, you know." And but you can see how good fortune comes your way without you struggling and grasping after it. They just fall like petals from the sky. You find favor with somebody, some plan opens up, some honor that you weren't expecting, all of these things are good fortune, and they're useful, they're useful in the Dharma. But sometimes if our eyes are fixed in the wrong place, then no matter how much Dharma we are exposed to, we can't see it. That's this basic ignorance that he talks about. It doesn't mean dumb, but it means that we cannot actually see what is occurring because of our tendency, our obscurations, prevent us from seeing uh, uh, the goodness that's all around. And if we could just remain still, there would be no way that we could prevent being overtaken by the goodness. But we're always running, even when nobody's chasing us. So today I wanted to talk about who we really are. And some of these things we might have to hear 1,000 times because we've heard other things 1,000 times. And we have some idea about the nature of reality that are dissolving, slowly dissolving. And we have to give ourselves time to deconstruct what's constructed. If I imagine a house in my mind, let's say I have a house that I want to build, and I can imagine what it looks like, its exterior, its interior, the kinds of fixtures I'm going to have in there, the colors, the design, all of that. And I can have that in my mind. But and if I wanted to leave my mind, it's very easy for it to leave my mind. I just put my mind on something else and that goes away. But if I actually build it, once it's been constructed, has been concretized, has moved from the mental realm into the phenomenal world, then it's going to take a little bit more to deconstruct it. It's going to take a little bit more to tear it down. I'm going to need some heavy equipment to raise that house. I'm going to need trucks to haul off the debris. I'm going to need, and that's a natural thing. So why do we feel like it's so hard? Or why are we so impatient with our progress? Or why are we so frustrated? Because we don't understand the concept, or why are we perturbed if we forget spiritual principles that have not really settled in us? Since we don't have to be, it's the more concretized it is, the more it's going to take to haul it away. That's just a natural thing. No need to be frustrated about it. I'm happy when there's something that I don't understand, because I'm always thinking, like, wherever I am right now in my understanding, where I am in my development, where I am in what I think is my basic goodness. If this was the highest level that one could reach, it would be frankly scary. you know. So I'm always thinking in that way, that when I encounter something that shows my fault, you know, points up my, you know, some kind of behavior I need to improve upon, I'm not sad about it. I'm not mad about it. I actually rejoice in it because I know I can do better. I know I can do better. And that there is a recompense that comes with whatever state you're in. So I'll just say, I know my state because it produces this, you know. And when I get in a higher state, it will produce this. And so I just know where I am, and I know what I need to work on. You know, so it doesn't matter at this level whether we're doing really good or whether we're doing not so good. It's about recognizing and owning where we are. And in that way, we gradually shift and change, and we get better and better. And we don't, we can do it in a kind of impersonal way, you know, like no flagellation. I'm so unworthy. None of that. You just start going through life in a smoother, more copacetic way, and you apply that latitude to yourself, and you apply it to others. Now you're not so upset when somebody does something to you, from cutting you off in front of traffic to saying something about you that's true or not true, but revealing, you know, um, a a confidence, or betraying a confidence, or someone even takes something that's yours, or whatever someone tries to do with you. There's this idea that uh, um, nothing can by any means harm you. It's only the ego that can be attacked, the ego that can be bruised, the ego that can, you know, experiences the pain of rejection or of loss, or, and so that's why he talks so much about the five skandhas, or the five aggregates of form, feeling, perception, or ideation, action, and consciousness. That none of these five aggregates, these five things that we think is us, is actually us. And the more we can see that they are not us, the freer we become. And the more we lose our fear about things that made us fearful when we thought those things were actually us. And sometimes it helps us to be able to understand others who are grappling with the same things, who are trying just like we're trying to be a better person, to be a, a more useful person. I mean, you can really look past their shortcomings, and you can see their struggle, and you don't add to it. You find a way to support them in their own desire for growth, their own objective for freedom and for liberation. And before you know it, I mean, like you just don't have any enemies. You can actually see that most, not all, but most of our enemies are really just machinations in our own mind. And it's really not, nobody's doing anything to us. They may be doing something to themselves, or they're just doing whatever they think they need to do to survive. And we're taking it personally, when it doesn't really have a lot to do with us, you know, except that we have like gotten all into that. due to our egoic nature. But as we start just letting those things go, then we find peace, on every front. Now, the other side of that is now other things have to come to the surface. And that is, you have to learn how to use your own wisdom, because the more you enter into this kind of peace, the more compassion you have for people, the more you want them to be well and happy and peaceful and nothing to disturb their happiness, the more you want for them the things that they want for themselves. And so in that giving nature, you have to have enough wisdom to know what to give. And that's, and that can be a challenge, because the nature of generosity, the nature of generosity literally commands that whatever is within your power to offer, that you offer. And so there's a time of learning to be generous, and there's a time of learning what the some things that look right to do in the short view is not necessarily as magnanimous as if you had a long view. So sometimes we have to stretch our view to know when to do something, when to say yes, when to help, when not to help. And we, unfortunately, we sort of learn it through trial and error, unless our mind has been infused with prajna, and we can be still enough to hear prajna speak. Someone, when we were coming home, and we were talking amongst ourselves, and someone said, "Now, Venerable, don't make any moves, don't make any decisions." There's a lot of thoughts swirling, and they're not your thoughts. These are thoughts that have other people's thoughts that have been offered. And you need to let all of that settle down. And I knew she was right, because my mind was, I didn't know what I did with my credit card, my bank card. I didn't, it was just busyness up in there, but it wasn't my busyness. It was my thinking about what is the right response, what's the right thing to do, what's the, and she said, don't do anything, just let things settle. And when I got home, it began to settle, because I was out of the voices of, so many people, what so many people are trying to do, because they're building this 121-acre Buddhist town, out there, and they had people from all over the world that came together for the Dharma assembly, but also people were telling about what they're, ones who are doing in phase 1 and phase 2 of the development, what they were building and what the objective was. And basically it's like, like save the world, but I'm not trying to save the world now. At one time I had that in my mind, but if I could just help save who's in front of me, even if it's 2 people, I'm very much okay with that. I would consider that my work, who's in front of me. Now that's just my mind, and that's just my mind now. It was my mind all the time. because I'm like, go big or go home. But over the past few years, some kind of change has come over me that I don't despise what is small, you know. And when I look at the masses and how scattered they can be because the teacher didn't have enough time or had too many students, and we're going through a routine, but not enough time to really help each one in front of them to unpack the dharma and how to utilize it in your life. So it would be better for each one to teach one. And more, I believe, could be accomplished than trying to save the masses. It might take longer. You might never see it in your own lifetime. But one plants, another waters, and maybe another sees the increase. When Jesus left, he had more than 12 disciples. He had his 12 main students. And of course, he had people that followed him and so forth. But the greater work was done after he left this world. The same with Buddha. By the time Buddha left this world, he had, because he was in the aristocratic what do you call it? Caste, yes. And so some say he was a prince, or I think certainly his father was a chieftain, and he was in that caste system. And so, of course, when he talked to his friends, who were his friends? His friends were other aristocrats, and they were other, high-ranking people. And of course, there was the Brahmin class, which is supposed to be the highest class of human being, according to the Hindu, the religion that he was in and raised up in. But the aristocratic class, or the class of the rulers, the rulers rule. So the Brahmin had to be very careful, even though they were of a higher tier, because they would be subject to the whim of the kings and the chieftains and so forth. So he was there at the top of his caste, and when he was searching for enlightenment or attained awakening, he went back to everybody he knew. So he went back to kings, and he went back to rulers, and he talked to them. Of course, he talked to all other classes of people too, but predominantly, or he started with those, and that's happened to just be the class that he was a part of, that he was born into, or that he chose to be born into, so that he could use their influence and use their resources to establish more clarity about the path to enlightenment. And because of that, he had lots of help and lots of support, and lots of things could happen. People give them a lot of land, and they build things, and they, and they offer jewels and all that. But by the time the Buddha died, or as he was preparing to enter into Nibbana, he was back in the forest. He was back in the forest, and you couldn't compare outwardly. You could not compare his supposed success. It would look more like he was a failure. And nobody talks about it in Buddhism, we just talk, spiritual talk. But just in an ordinary way, what you saw was greatly different than the triumph that he had at the beginning of his ministry. And so I think about things like that, moving beyond and leaving behind the ordinary things of life. And your vision changes, your view changes, what's precious to you changes the more you step out of the world view. So he talks about knowing what the Dharmakaya is. And we say we think we
Yeah, ask me
Yeah.
about it. I was like, no.
we say we know what it is, but I'm not sure that we do. But the more we start to know what it is, the more we start to get an idea of it, it gets difficult for me to use words like who we truly are. These catchy little phrases that we speak about. But so I'd like to read something that Brewmaster shared from. He said from a combination of 4 elements. However, this human thus established is provisional, subject to impermanence, will arise, exist, decay, and vanish. That is why human being is called false. False in the sense that it is subject to impermanence. After the 4 great elements combine, a name is given. We are called human being, and then designated a personal name. And we must keep this in mind, that human beings arise, exist, decay, and vanish. But when the 4 great elements disintegrate, only the one with the false name perishes. And then he talks about how the elements disintegrate. And everybody knows that first the wind disperses and the breathing stops. Then the fire disperses. The body loses its warmth and becomes cold. Next to disintegrate is water. The blood begins to congeal. The mouth and nose will often emit water, and the lower body sometimes also releases fluid. Then the earth disperses. Last, the organs, the intestines, stomach, liver, and lungs start to rot. And then the skin and the flesh rot. The muscles and the tendons and the bones decay last. And ultimately, the body becomes emptiness with nothing left. Thus, it vanishes completely as a result of impermanence. The one with the false names perishes. But if one has realized the plain Dharmakaya while alive, one can abide in nirvana without remaining reliance. But without such realization, although one's bodily form perished, returning to emptiness, in reality, one's spirit transmigrates into another realm in accordance with one's karma. So we have to know, he said, I don't care what you call it, you can call it life, you can call it whatever, but there is something that animated this false body of the elements and gave it activity, it gave it substance. And when that leaves, then that which we call ourselves, but it's just the aggregates, falls no more than like taking off a suit and dropping it on the floor. So even though we don't know by what means we came into the world, we can certainly recognize that there is something with life that when it leaves this body, then falls apart. It's in it, the body is animated, alive. When it leaves, then what we call ourselves drops away. He said, that is what I'm talking about. He said, this is very important. If you can realize that in this situation, then one has, listen attentively, one has realized the plain Dharmakaya during one's lifetime. So do you understand the concept of plain Dharmakaya? The plain Dharmakaya is the state of prajna. Now that lets me know that almost at any time, and that there can hardly be truly anyone who has not recognized the plain Dharmakaya. Is there anyone in here who doesn't know the difference between what we call a dead person and a person who's alive? Is there anyone? That's our starting point, to just simply acknowledge that there is something that exists, that when it is gone, that which we look at and relate to is drops off and has no life, has no animation. Said that is after realizing prajna, with the realization appearing before you, when the previous thought is gone, the next thought has not yet arisen, and there is not attachment to this interim state where emptiness and existence are non-dual. This is the nature of awareness of the plain Dharmakaya. Okay. So what he's saying in essence is that we actually realize that there is something else that animates, that's here, and we know it when it's gone. We may not have the right view or understanding when it's here, because I might think my feelings are me, or I might think, my thoughts are me. But even if they are me, that me can leave, and everything else that represented me would just decay. It would just fall apart, starting with the wind cut off, and then the heat, the fluid, and that is the false self. If you could just reflect on that there is some life-giving property in us that's separate and apart from, like, the clothing, the aggregates are like the clothing we wear, the colors that we put on, but they are not us. That's the beginning of being able to enter into further states of prajna. So maybe in this, I was gonna say in this day and time, but I don't think we're a lot smarter than people in other days and time. Only we think we're smarter. But maybe we do have some concept of dharmakaya already. And it says that if you have to be able to protractedly abide in the samadhi state of the plain dharmakaya and do so imperturbably, and that is called the state of samadhi. So if I'm constantly thinking thoughts of thoughts, I am not my thoughts, then I could abide in a kind of settledness and peace that thoughts would not perturb me after a while. But the more I consider I am my thoughts are me, then the more I will abide in the movement of thoughts. If I think thoughts are the real thing, then I will abide in thought. But if I don't think thoughts are the real thing, then I won't abide in them. If I keep thinking that there is this thing, call it plain dharmakaya, call it life, if you will, but I am that, and thoughts don't have as much influence over me. I can abide in a place of equanimity. Thinking thoughts arise, they abide, and then they go all the time. All the time. So I know thoughts can't be me because they come and they go. Maybe I could say there is a thought, there are thoughts, and thoughts come and thoughts go. That's a way we can begin to move into a state of meditation that is true, that will allow the falling away of constructed phenomena. Now, you could be spiritual or not spiritual with that. Um, and it says that only that is called a state of samadhi. So when you're able to abide in that state at any time, when you can bring up that state and let it go at will, then you have entered the plain dharmakaya. When you're able to abide in that state of samadhi at any time, when you can bring that state up and let it go at will. That's why it says the meditation on death is the most powerful meditation that you can do. So we just say the meditation on death, and what are we doing when we're doing the meditation on death? How, this is telling you how to recognize, how to do a meditation on death. The difference between a corpse and a living being. Just noticing that difference right there. And he says, and the more you do it, the less you will cling and grasp around the five aggregates. And these then will become things or tools that you can use in life rather than being, used by them because we've misunderstood or taken them to be ourselves. And that's the only way that peace can come to you. The only way. So there is this thing that came in to, and our form of birth is called water. when it comes into the mother, this thing that leaves, that causes, I won't say it leaves at death, it leaves so there is death. When it leaves, there is death. And it travels, pushed forward by karma, the law of karma. And it sets up for a reappearance in a place suitable for the effect of actions already taken to go forward. And so that is the rebirth linking consciousness. That's not a part of human consciousness, but it's the rebirth linking consciousness. And it takes the egg, the sperm, and this rebirth linking consciousness to produce a being. So if a fetus or if a baby is born, stillborn, it means that they had the egg and the sperm, but not the consciousness didn't stay. And that's what a stillborn is. They're lacking the consciousness, that which makes them what? Starts with an A, alive. That's which makes them alive. So we can really understand this, if we think about it. And he says, when you're able to abide in that knowing that there is a life, and we see the clothing, the dressing of that life, but this dressing is not the life itself. Then we're in a place that we can begin to understand what the Dharmakaya is, the original Buddha nature. Now, before we have the original Buddha nature, we have the working out of karma. And that's how these things tie together in a way that they paint a picture that you can recognize and that you can build upon. So when the elements, if you're able to do so at will, that means this comes to your mind, and it becomes so natural that you're not your thought after a while. You're not. You're not your feeling. You have feelings. There are feelings there, but you're not the feelings. And then you learn how that you can actually overcome to a great extent the feelings that you have by your own volition, by your own will. You can choose not to be offended when certain things are said or done. If you recognize being offended is suffering. In the beginning, we don't recognize that being offended is suffering. We think what you said is suffering. But no, it's not what you said about me. It's the offense I take that is the suffering. It's like, oh, I missed it. I thought it was what you said to me, or I thought it was what you did to me. I thought it was what I didn't get, or I thought it was. And he said, no, it's the way you take it. It's the suffering. He said, but if you can hold it loosely, then there'll be less suffering. So we're responsible in this way for our own freedom. We're responsible for our own happiness. We are responsible. Nobody's job is to make me happy. I am responsible for my own happiness. And so if something happens between me and you, and I end up being unhappy, then that's on me. Now, that I will say there might be some karma in what you do if it's harmful, you know, but I don't get to really experience the result of that. I just get to experience my own suffering and the result of that. So it makes for the crazies for me to go around expecting you to do something that only I can do for myself. And we have to be very, very, very convinced that what we're doing is actually causing us suffering. You know, when we intellectually talk it out, we say, yeah, that causes us suffering. But when we're actually in the throes of it, it's not so easy. And that's really all that spiritual practice is, or at least that's the step that we take to enter into higher states of consciousness. It's just recognizing I am responsible for my own happiness. And if I can't make me happy, don't count on me. Don't count on me making you happy. Because I can't even make myself happy. And so we work on ourselves. And he says, little by little, the mind will see that we've been grasping around the false appearances, and we will let them go. And a kind of contentment will settle in. A kind of peace will be there. If something is taken away, you find you can do without it. If something is added, you find that you can just simply make use of it, enjoy it because it's there. And life just becomes like there's a kind of equilibrium that establishes itself because you're not grasping after outer things. You pick up and use what is to be used. You can lay down what needs to be laid down. If and as you discover that it destroys your peace. So every week I ask you all to work on something, but then I forget what I asked you to work on.
So do we,
So, yeah. So what I really like for you to do is just look at the things that arise in your life this week, you know, and what your response to it is. And if you are experiencing suffering around it, look and see what is the cause of that. Who's responsible for that? And the minute you say, he said such and such, or he did such and such, or whatever, ask yourself, is that really true? If I'm responsible for my own happiness, is that true? And see how you can work with yourself at letting things go and moving back to or abiding in that space of peace and equilibrium. Right then, right at that moment, when it starts to arise, you know, we see it arising and we like, this is not good. I shouldn't think this way, but we don't stop. We like just keep going with it a little bit more. And now it's out the gate and we can't handle it. We've lost control of it. You know, but if we notice it when it's arising, in time, we will be able to stop it. And you'll find yourself contented more and more, smiling for no reason. You feel lighter, not so much of a weight. You can't try to change yourself. That won't do it. We just have to see the nature of reality. That will do it. So the last thing I want to say, it says that why do we practice doing this? Because at some point, that which is real is going to drop off these aggregates. And there will be a reappearance according to the states that of understanding that we have of cause and condition. So if I have not created the causes for certain conditions, then there won't be an effect that needs to happen there. So he says, it's kind of like this. If you're able to abide continually or again and again and again in these states of samadhi, even if they're just momentary, like I recognize I'm responsible for my own happiness. So whatever he said, that's on his side. I don't have to be moved by that. And there's some relief. Said, but on the other hand, you gotta handle people who, because they get out of control and then you're right back into it. But for a moment, you were not. And maybe the next time, for longer than a moment, you will not. And then ultimately, some things you can just like let them go, not gonna deal with them at all. But, and in time, some of these will become your new way of being in the world. He says, then you'll be able to bring up that state and you can let go of it at will. He said, when you can bring it up and let it go at will, then you have entered the plane dharmakaya. It's like you knock on the door and you step into a house and then you leave, But at some point, you will go in that house and you will abide because you will have elevated because of prajna to that level of knowing, and that level of understanding, and that level of functioning. If you're able to do so at will, at the very moment when the great element of wind disperses, what's that? At the moment, at the moment of death, you will immediately abide in the samadhi state of nirvana during the bardo or transmigration stage. At this time, since you are abiding in the dharmakaya state of samadhi, you have the opportunity to attain liberation. That means you can abide in nirvana without remaining reliance. When the great elements of earth, water, and fire that made up your body are dispersing, no problem. At that time, your consciousness is no longer bound by samsara. And you'll be able to do things at will and with ease, including traversing the 3 spheres and transforming into whatever you want to transform into. But if you've not realized this state, if you're still affected by the 6 sense bases, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, if you're moved by the sense objects, form, sound, smells, taste, touches, and objects of mind, thoughts, if you do not see the 5 aggregates as false or empty, then your consciousness will immediately transmigrate into another realm of existence, phenomenal realm. It will immediately cycle into another realm. You may become a ghost, pig, a horse. You may become a deva, according to what's ripening based on your actions and the law of cause and effect. So without remainder means that you have now cycled out of the law of cause and effect. So when you're touching that emptiness, just touching it from time to time, you're stepping outside the law of cause and effect until there comes a time you step outside of it and you don't go back into it. It becomes your permanent home. Where? Outside of the law of the realm or of cause and effect. If not, you will become, what you become will be based on the karmic forces that will draw you, that you have seeded in many lifetimes. So the outcome completely depends on your state of playing Dharmakaya that it is realized in this lifetime. So we close that teaching by saying, therefore, I hope you disciples here, whose learning of Buddha Dharma is a little lacking, will at least realize the state of plain Dharmakaya, so that when you enter the Bardo stage, you will not follow transmigration back into samsara. I hope that you will be in control of yourself. Anybody have any questions? And this is just something to think on and to ponder on how we elevate our mind and how we transform our thinking. Yeah.
And I had sent you something, and I can say that the past 9 months have been an opportunity, like this kind of preempts the homework, to really look at how my perception of reality and the aggregates have impacted and at times been beneficial and sometimes imploded, depending on the causes. I can say that there are areas in my life that I have been able to see exactly what you said, where what may have been perceived as a strike or a harm or a foul done to anyone but me, it's just been washed away. Just, it's almost a non sequitur, just keep on swimming Nemo. And then the big trigger that did happen, that I had beat the shit out of myself for months. Big trauma. And realize that my windfall of liberation doesn't have to come in a waterfall. To kind of find that joy, and you had a lot of tumultuous experiences that you kind of poo-pooed behind, but the one thing that I was clinging to was the area that I felt flat out, and accepting the fact that just to even recognize that experience and recognize the areas that dropping those aggregates, dropping this is not me, this is not mine, and seeing the other side, and then seeing no side, has been, hey Bodhi Cat, has been truly a shift and brought me ease and joy. And then to be able to look back and say, really the cause and effect of that, which was horrible and I don't want to do again, led to some beneficial things for the now. And just to be able to see the non-duality of both. But sometimes that's really hard in the big games, and sometimes you can go, wow, I just kind of wouldn't have done that before. So just, I was thinking about that, kind of the recognition and the reckoning of the mind and where you're at in that moment.
And should give you some comfort when we're going through a hard trial. Something, it's to count it all joy when you enter into these kinds of cycles, because that's where you come to know what you're made of, what your strengths are, and what your weaknesses are. If you didn't have those, we can call them tests, or we can call them trials, because they do test us and they do try us, but they're not really tests and trials. We call them that because of their impact on us. But he said, if you could look at them instead of in a negative way, in a positive way, that so that we don't fool ourselves, we know what we really need to work on, what we're really weak at. I thought I was stronger than that, and then I don't know, she said such and such, and then I just like went off, and then I got myself together about 10 minutes later, but already popped off by then, and so that's when we, why we use the four reliances, or, we're trying to keep unarisen, unwholesome states from arising, and when they have arisen, we subdue them. And why we establish wholesome states. And when they're there, we do everything within our power to keep them present, to not let go of them, not let someone else steal our joy, not let, and this is our constant work. And when we see it like that, we don't have good and bad. We just see what is happening in the present moment, and we see our response to it. And if our response has brought us suffering, then what will I do differently next time? Because they may not do anything differently next time. What will I do differently next time that I don't experience this kind of suffering? Or what will I do differently next time that I don't cause them more suffering? Because obviously they're suffering about something. What can I do that won't do differently? And this is the mind of the Bodhisattva, how Bodhisattva perfects themselves until they reach the higher stages that enable them, to fully revel in the ultimate Bodhi mind.
Well, thank you, because I would definitely say, my capacity with people has been a true blessing. And for me, I know that in my ability to change my capacity and my engagement with people has freed them as well. And hopefully that just kind of lights the light for other people too. So thank you for that. That's something I definitely walk through this world with differently. Thank you.
Anybody else? If somebody will close for us.
If there be any merit at all from our thoughts, words, and deeds, or cultivating or practicing, may it be divided equally among all living beings in each of the 6 worlds and the other worlds as well. And may we all let go of greed and hatred and ignorance. And may we all abide in emptiness, free of attachment.